Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tired Boys podcast. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back for another race weekend recap episode. We had the Japanese Grand Prix this weekend, so we'll get into all of that along with some quick hitters. But looking forward to a fun episode, Justin.
Yeah, good to see you, Aaron. I agree. Looking forward to a good episode here. We had a nice, sunny, dry Japanese Grand Prix this year, which is not always the case, so that was exciting. But before we get into all of that, roll the intro. Just
You're
this
not 2D.
chatbot for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was fun to reach out and touch you, my friend.
Circuit of the Americas is where it's a track that was created for racing.
So the race is a flat fee, and then it's the bake off afterwards where things get really kooky.
Okay, that's where all the weirdness comes in. Mercedes definitely started planning for their new car.
If Red Bull came out and was just like, Adrian Newey designed our car.
Yeah.
Whoa, yeah, did he really?
No way.
All right, great. Yeah, we'll get to the meat of the Grand Prix here in just a little bit. But Aaron, why don't you start us off with our quick hitters here, because we have some interesting ones for you this week.
Yeah, so the first one doing, and I had kind of held off on talking much like MotoGP and Super GP and everything because we were saying like F1 related, and so looking primarily at feeder series, IndyCar, and kind of former F1 drivers and their racing careers. But F1 owner Liberty Media Corporation this past week purchased MotoGP for 4.2 billion euros. A big acquisition underneath the umbrella of Liberty Media Group Corporation, and so I think that's interesting, especially looking at there were kind of immediate statements and articles put out about MotoGP and kind of their push to maintain their current structure even under the new purchase. Primarily, one of the concerns is with Formula One, F2, F3, F1 Academy are not there every race weekend, where for MotoGP, Moto3 and Moto2 both are at every race weekend there for the MotoGP weekends. So looking to kind of maintain that structure, I think it's a little easier when all you're transporting from circuit to circuit are motorcycles. A little bit easier than these big F1 cars and everything to be able to do that. But I think that's a good call to not like lose their structure and kind of what's working for them just due to being acquired by a new ownership group.
Yeah, and you can understand the side of MotoGP wanting to keep what they have going on, but just allow for the Liberty Media Corporation to just be a parent company. The one thing that I would look forward to, not knowing much about MotoGP, but being keen to, what would you say? I'm aware of just broadcasting in general. And if you look at the F1 TV broadcast, all of the analysis that they do, the interviews that they do, the expert level insight that you're able to be exposed to on the F1 TV broadcast, I think one could look forward to, if anything, possibly the MotoGP just like broadcast improves. Maybe they're able to bring some more like content around like drivers and teams. Maybe they're able to bring like more segments to bring to bring fans in to learn about the sport. Maybe a little bit more than they already have access to. I'm sure there's huge portals and huge communities of conversation around MotoGP. But if there's one thing that you see the F1 just kind of uh, product does really well is the broadcast is clean as fuck. All of like the graphics, just overall, it's just a very clean product. So that would be something that I would keep my eyes to see like is that an angle that they're able to improve on with getting some some big money parentage like this.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the biggest boom for this. I mean, obviously, Netflix has had the Drive to Survive series where we've talked about the other shows that have kind of come up in different sports, golf, tennis, IndyCar, and everything that Netflix has put out. I think the growth of the sport would be the goal, obviously, of Liberty as well, looking to boost their profits and their income by having a larger audience looking at their now multiple racing series and all. So I think the cleanness and like the kind of maybe like graphics and those things, like MotoGP does a pretty decent job, but I mean it can't hurt to have additional input coming in, additional resources and everything. So hopefully it just can like boosts up an already like fun series to watch. I watch a lot of the race replays, or at the very least like the highlights of them. They're pretty short races. They're usually only about 20-25 laps, so
Okay.
it's a bit quicker to watch along to. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing kind of what comes of that, and hopefully it just boosts the kind of the eyes on MotoGP. So
Yeah, for sure. Just the last thing I'll ask you about MotoGP, just in case anybody listening isn't too familiar. Now, as I understand it, they race on some of the same tracks that Formula One does.
yeah, they don't really do any like street circuits that I'm aware of. But they do race on a number of the same tracks and circuits as Formula One and other like four-wheel racing. They race at Silverstone, they race at Bahrain, they race at Suzuka, so they do kind of go all over as well.
Very
And
cool.
so MotoGP is kind of the like most like worldwide, I guess, largest motorcycle racing championship. There's
Okay.
a number of other ones that are kind of outside of that, but they seem to be a bit more regional, sort of like IndyCar to the U.S. So.
Sure. Very cool.
But yeah, so moving along to the next quick hitter, there was an interview that Max Verstappen did this past weekend leading into the Japanese Grand Prix weekend, but it was he was kind of asked about women in motorsports, and he basically said that like having F1 Academy, having it sponsored by Formula One, and really taking it under the wing is a good start in terms of the series and bringing more women into motorsport in general. But he also was saying how it's just a start because the cars are not at a level where you can even like with the speeds and whatnot that they go at really climb up to being closer to Formula One very easily. So this like initial step of boosting up the series and everything is good, but it's like how are you actually preparing these drivers to potentially be able to compete
Mm-hmm.
at the levels that they, I'm sure, would be capable of with the resources and everything brought in. So that was an interesting point. But the other one that I found interesting was he kind of talked about the sponsorships and everything from the teams and how that like is a good thing. But he's like, yeah, they have like the team names and all, but what are we actually doing? Like, what are these teams actually doing to help these drivers? Like, it seems, and I hadn't really thought about it that much, but it does to some extent seem like a lot of it is just like, oh, you're driving under our name now, and like, good luck on your race weekend. It doesn't necessarily feel like there is um, maybe that more broad pull from the team to bring those drivers in to say, yeah, like let's set you up with these resources that we have to be able to allow you to improve and compete at a higher level and everything, and really kind of boost that series up. It's like, where does that the sponsorship from the team actually like stop?
Hmm.
Does it or are they providing the proper resources like a team should to all of its like academy drivers? And
Well,
so it's
maybe
yeah,
it's not about the like resources given, maybe in hopes of getting more eyes on the series, maybe just having a more recognizable team name at the kind of at the forefront, they believe is like a strategy to keep people maybe engaged or give more of a footing in the door. Like, for example, for me, it would be way easier to support a Mercedes driver than a Prima racing driver. I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know what Prima Racing is. Like, why do I care about them? What's their pedigree? How close are they to like like how many championships do they have? Like these kind of things. If you want to get behind a winning team or a losing team, like looking just at the board flat, it's really tough to get a sense of like who should I be looking at other than based on like recent results, right?
yeah,
So even if they aren't getting, let's say, Mercedes F1 expert level advice, there there would still be definite boons to having at least some of that sponsorship money coming through and having
yeah.
the name recognition of like being a Mercedes driver. Like that's kind of sick just in and of itself.
Well, and I think that's where it's kind of like sort of vague in terms of what it is, because it's like the Red Bull Junior drivers that are in F2 and F3, I'm sure get a certain amount of resources from the team, whether it's primarily financial, whether there's other aspects of that,
Hmm.
and coaching and all. Because obviously, like if these drivers are part of the F1, like the a team's junior team or their academy type team, then the
Hmm.
goal is to grow these drivers into potential F1 talents like Red
Hmm.
Bull and Mercedes, and they're not just having like all these drivers, they're not just paying all their expenses and doing all of that just to be like, hey, hope you do great, bud. We're really hoping to see you one day. I feel like there is a lot more of a development perspective with that, of like, hey, yes, like you're racing for your own teams right now, but let's find ways to give you what you need to be successful, in hopes that one day our kind of um, gamble of spending this money on you, or our investment, pays off. Like,
Hmm.
are the F1 Academy drivers being looked at as like, we're just we're giving you our name to boost your like your viewership and to get more eyes on you, so yay women in motorsports? Or are you saying, I think that there are drivers out there that are women and that would race in F1 Academy that we can develop the same way we do an F3 a karting to F3 to F2 driver, in hopes of them being an F1 driver one day? Like, is there actually that mindset of like, we want to like have the best drivers, and some of them could be women, so let's give them the same kind of treatment? You would hope so, but from Max, it seemed like he was kind of just like unaware of like, what are we actually doing in terms of benefiting these F1 Academy drivers. Is it just name recognition, or like, where are we going with it? Which is, I mean, it's the first really like full year of F1 Academy with all the sponsorships and everything coming in, so hopefully it is, just like he said, kind of a good first step in the right direction and all.
For sure.
But it's an interesting conversation in terms of kind of looking at the future of the series and like where you would hope it would grow into.
Yeah, and it still may have some, some growing pains in that regard. Unsure what the sponsorships really mean in that regard. But yeah, I guess we'll kind of keep our eyes to it, stay tuned, and see. Hopefully Max isn't right in the long term. That's, I guess, my angle.
Yeah, well, definitely. I think like it was more of him saying like, hopefully we are doing more for these.
Oh, like
drivers.
Genuinely asking the
Like,
question,
yeah,
not
yeah.
like being.
Oh no, definitely. It was kind of like,
Okay.
not poo-pooing, but like, are we doing like enough with just saying, oh, you're
For sure.
X team driver now, and like, are we actually like trying to help these drivers more than that?
Right.
So,
That makes sense.
But yeah, so moving along to the next quick hitter, we've got some musical circuits. There was news that there's the potential that Liberty is going to replace Circuit of the Americas with a New York street circuit in the coming years. Spa potentially being replaced on the calendar with the new Qiddiya City circuit in the Middle East, and then Silverstone potentially being replaced with a London street circuit in 2024. So there's a lot up in the air in terms of especially some of these circuits. We know Spa, Silverstone both have just been kind of being renewed like year to year. We kind of wait until the race weekend, and then they're like, surprise, you're still going to be here one more year, but that's all we can promise you. So looking at some potentially like some very classic and circuits that I think there's typically really good racing at, which is what has made them some of these like famous and classic circuits for F1, potentially moving off the calendar. I know Circuit of the Americas is typically considered to be an extremely racy, like fun circuit, lots of overtaking opportunities, lots of variation in that circuit.
That's a purpose-built track, though, not a street circuit. Traditionally,
Right.
street circuits have like low overtaking opportunities here.
And so the shift from these like really classic Silverstone, and Spa, all three of them being like classic racetracks and everything.
Sure.
And I mean, Spa, I know, was at one point like roads, but I know for I guess now for probably like 60 years it's been a racing circuit. So but yeah, looking at all these potentially being replaced by street circuits, it's a little. I hope it doesn't all happen at once and just like, or if there is, that maybe some of the current street circuits like shift out for other tracks,
Mm-hmm.
and all to mix things around, because I love some street circuits, but like we said, they don't provide the best quality of racing typically, in terms of overtaking and the different opportunities that you have as a driver there.
Right.
So
But what we do know about street circuits is high speed, high jeopardy, and like it is money in the hands, hopefully, of the city. Like that's why they do it.
yeah,
They're allowing cities to like bid for like race slots, basically.
but I think if they do that, I feel like there should be a certain number that are like, it's a limit per season or something. Because
We
I,
guarantee 3 non-street circuit
oh
races
god,
per 24 race season,
yeah,
at
that's
least.
at least three. Oh, that's it's a tough bargain.
Yeah, I'm not a fan because like okay, I think it would have the opposite effect of what they're hoping for. So high speed, high jeopardy, close to the wall, racing is like rather exciting. They're, thinking people are going to turn up for that. But what I think it's going to do is just shift the metagame to like qualifying being just
Mhm.
like way more important at all
Right.
of these street circuits, and then the race days just being like quite boring, most likely, where people aren't really able to like improve their luck in some significant regard, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that would be my initial worry, hearing that there would be more street circuits.
Yeah, and I'm with you. And again, like, the if the goal is to boost the like viewership, the money, and XYZ for the area, bring that influx. One, London and New York City don't need F1 to bring money in. Like, there's nothing
Yeah.
about them that, and so yes, it's like an iconic place, but I think there's more value in having iconic races than iconic places. I think
Ah.
you want to like like you want to maximize the opportunities that you have, what you say are the best drivers in the world out here racing, and then you're putting them in positions where just getting, like you said, the qualifying mattering more. You have to just have that one fast lap, and then you can just kind of lock it in a little bit easier for the race and all. That just doesn't make for the most exciting time. I mean, we've turned up and done race companions and watch throughs of Monaco qualifying together and not the actual race because of that. So it's
Right.
like, that's I'm completely with you. That's my biggest concern, is just losing out on the opportunities to see like the best racing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah, and
also,
honestly,
yeah,
dude,
in
you
the
take
kind of,
Spa, like,
Spa's just a great circuit. It's so fun.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
it would be a
Although
bummer to miss out on some of those circuits.
the good thing about them though is they are purpose-built circuits, so like they can always come back to them. It's not like a
True.
city losing a bid on a race. They can always just say like, oh, we can't, blah 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 blah, and then just like put Silverstone right back on the calendar. So like that's the silver lining of it.
Yeah, I think that's an optimistic view. But another shift for next year's race calendar, Australia is going to go back to being the first on the calendar, from what I was seeing,
Hmm.
because of the shift on what days you can race due to Ramadan in the Middle East. So starting back with Australia, first race of the season, and then shifting over. I think that will be kind of fun to go back to that. kind of format of the schedule and everything. Even now, I feel like Australia has had its fair share of drama over the past couple of years with crashes and different things. Like, it's a tough, hard circuit and a fun one, but to just go into that first race of the season without a full perspective on the car, I think that really makes it pretty interesting to have at the top of the calendar over
Yeah.
Bahrain or Jeddah.
And talking and you're coming from the angle of like the type of track that it is. Yeah, I'm just for the consistent schedule. It was kind of confusing during the weeks, and like planning for
Yeah.
being around for the sessions. Obviously you make it happen. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, I'm happy that they would be shifting around the schedule to, just have it all, races on Sunday and keep it consistent.
Yeah. So and that definitely is helpful with viewership and everything as well. I know I saw that people were talking about viewership numbers being down for the first two races of the year and whatnot, and I was like, it was on different days. Like,
Yeah.
it's that's just gonna happen. Like, there were also some that were on like ESPN's main channel and others that were on,
Mm-hmm.
and this year's race was on like ESPN2 or something like
Mm.
that. And it's like, you can't really compare. You're not comparing apples to apples with it, but yeah, I think the consistency is huge for viewership and people who are more casual fans kind of being able to watch how they typically do, not getting thrown out of the loop. You turn the TV on for qualifying and your race is about to get started. You thought you were in it for the next 50 minutes to an hour, and you're in it for two. So yeah, I think that definitely is helpful for structure viewership. I'm sure for the teams as well. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so just to wrap out the last of the quick hitters, I'll breeze through these. But um, David Sanchez, who had left Ferrari to go to McLaren, working in their as their technical director, has just left the team. So there was some organizational restructuring within McLaren that led to David Sanchez's role, I guess, kind of not fitting what they expected to utilize him for when they were kind of pitching to bring him over. So he'll be leaving the team. I don't believe that there's any sort of news on his future or anything, but kind of one of those big signings that McLaren got last year that was announced and all, only lasting about 3 months is kind of interesting. But again, McLaren was just bought out, and there had been some potential for organizational restructuring, but this seems like more of a during the off season they made some changes that just kind of pushed him out of the intended role a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a sense that I got from the team principals, conference when they were talking about it. Unfortunate, but it sounded like it happens pretty like commonly in one team or another.
Right.
So yeah, unfortunate for the individual, but it doesn't sound like, the end of the world in any regard.
No, and especially with like what the gardening leave, like things that are in people's contracts where you have to wait X amount of time after signing with or agreeing to a contract with a new team to actually joining them, to kind of make that transition smoother for both sides, I guess. But with the gardening leave, like, you have a lot of potential that over the 6, 8, 9 months, whatever it is, between when you hire the person and they can officially start for you, things are going to potentially change with your team structure. Someone else may leave. Someone else
Mm-hmm.
may be able to be promoted into that role, and things kind of shift around a bit more fluidly in this landscape. But yeah, just kind of a surprise because it was a pretty big signing from Ferrari to go so quickly. Um, but yeah, I'm sure he'll land on another team not too long down the road. But then just looking at some of the potential driver rumors, we had, of course, Audi, who's going to be taking the Kick Sauber F1 team spot in 2026. Reportedly is looking at Nico Hulkenberg and Carlos Sainz reuniting the Renault lineup from 2018 as their driver pairing.
Okay.
Looking for kind of some strong veteran drivers to come in and lead the charge with that acquisition. Mercedes still looking at Kimi Antonelli as kind of their primary person. Seb Vettel, of course, I had mentioned his name's been thrown around, but I think my only concern with Antonelli coming in directly into that seat is just, even with George shifting to, like we had talked about, kind of the leadership role on the team and everything, and him having the experience and the knowledge to do that. I think it could be a really brutal way for someone to join F1 potentially, coming straight into that seat, because you're essentially replacing the GOAT. The shoes are going to be big to fill. The Mercedes fans have this history of success and everything, so that's the expectation. And you're just trying to come in as a 17, 18-year-old kid, learn, drive the best you can, and try and be successful. That's just a lot of external pressure that I think is potentially going to be put on him. I don't know if the answer is to put a veteran driver in there for a year and have him kind of continue to grow and develop a little bit more. But I worry about kind of the Red Bull problem that we saw after Daniel Ricciardo left for Renault, where you bring in a young driver and then you're just super critical and hard on them, where they rotated through Pierre Gasly coming up through and being super harsh on him, then Alex Albon replacing him, and just this rotation of drivers for a little while. You don't want to risk this person that you're putting all this investment and time and everything into just get blown up because of external factors.
I would imagine that there's way more drivers that have a Mercedes backing or a McLaren backing or an Aston Martin backing than we know of. And I imagine there's a lot of money going into drivers that never even get a test. Honestly, they don't even get the invite to the race, right? They just, you learn something about them and they're just like, all right, well, they're not good enough. Like, the only way that you're ever going to know is if you try it out. And I would argue, like, that's more on the driver than it is the team. Like, there is an infinite amount of drivers that feel like they're ready for a seat like that, and it's just a matter of like finding those ones. And if it's not Kimi Antonelli, it'll be somebody else. And either they're gonna like step up and like seize the moment and the opportunity, or they're just gonna like crumble under it, like you said, the pressure, the massive Lewis shoes. But like, yeah, I don't believe I don't believe Mercedes can know that until they like slot somebody in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's fair. I just I wonder if there is someone that could be like a more seasoned driver to just give. I mean, he's just really young, and I mean, we saw Max Verstappen do it and make that leap and everything, but there have been other
Mm-hmm.
drivers who have not been able to, and so it's
Mm-hmm.
like it's kind of that high risk, high reward, I guess,
Exactly.
atmosphere and everything. But I just I'm soft a little bit. Like I feel for these young drivers who are they're just
Sure.
kids
Okay.
that are just trying to like fulfill their dreams and all. And I mean, you see Alex Albon get dropped from Red Bull and everything, and then now he has had like some really strong seasons so far with
Mm-hmm.
Williams and everything. So uh, kind of shifting over that a driver who could have potentially just dropped out of F1 entirely. I mean, he did for a year and was racing in I forget what series it was even in. It might have been Formula.
DTM with Liam Lawson.
Yeah, so shifting over like out of the F1 series kind of entirely and then coming back is pretty rare. So,
What, dude? We can't say that anymore. Albon
okay.
did it. Ricardo did it. Gasly did it. Hulkenberg did it. Alonso did it. Dude,
Okay.
mad people have like gone and come back.
That's fair. That's fair. So,
Like
okay.
in our time,
Yeah.
I recognize there was a point where like that was uncommon, dude. But now we're in the recycling meta, dog. We're like,
That's
here, just let's just try them again. Let's see.
yeah. Okay. Okay. I'll give you that. Um, but
Alonso being the best of them.
yeah, definitely. Well,
Hmm.
and talking about him a little bit, kind of as we get into the Japanese Grand Prix weekend, that was a
Let's do it.
nice little interlude. But just in the pre-week press, it was I thought it was pretty interesting. It was a very even split. It seemed among drivers of whether they felt Alonso was the penalty in Australia was deserved or not, or too
Hmm.
harsh. But I thought Checo's kind of comments on it were, I think, pretty in line with what you and I have like talked about in the past, where we just want to see like good racing, consistency, things like that, which we've talked about. It's hard when the stewards are not the same at every single circuit and whatnot with the structure of the FIA. But
Hmm.
Checo talking about was talking about inconsistency with penalties from weekend to weekend, where he felt that the penalty to Alonso was a bit too much, but his biggest concern is seeing the inconsistencies between penalties and everything that are dished out. Where he referenced Jeddah, where Valtteri was blocked in quali one by Oliver Behrman and Alex Albon. No one gets a penalty. Checo blocks Nico Hulkenberg, who didn't lose much time on his hot lap at really at all, maybe a tenth of a second, and he did a faster lap after that anyway, and Checo gets a 3-place grid penalty. So he's like, there's not this consistency even in the same race weekend of like what is being officiated driver to driver, and so hopefully like there will be consistency in terms of what they're penalizing, and hopefully that's the goal for the FIA, because I think you and I have agreed in the past that it makes it difficult for fans to really know what to expect and everything. I think it creates
Hmm.
like unnecessary frustration and like bad feelings towards F1 among drivers and fans that are kind of like confused about why
Hmm.
something was called and everything. I mean, I've seen it a ton. Like I think the biggest area I've seen this recently is just in baseball, in Major League Baseball. But there is a pretty outspoken group in terms of fans, and I'd say probably a majority of fans in Major League Baseball want like robot umpiring for balls and strikes. Like you have the visual box that you put on TV of whether it's ball or strike anyway, and the amount of mistakes that are made by human umpires is
Mm-hmm.
like super frustrating for fans to like you can literally see whether something should be called a ball or a strike as you're watching, and to watch the umpire just like make mistakes and they don't correct it is like frustrating to watch. So I
Sure,
think
but if we have robots, how can the bookies get the fix in for the game?
that is one conspiracy that I've seen out there, that the officiating got worse once sports betting got really big. But in general, I think fans in today's day and age, like we have the technology in a lot of instances to provide really high quality officiating, whether it's like VAR in European football, in terms of whether a player's offsides or not. You have it in tennis where they have that digital version of did the ball catch any part of the white line and everything, and they can bring it up instantaneously after every shot of whether this is inbounds or out of bounds, and correct the referee there. So I think fans in general, like when you're looking at the highest quality of something and the highest quality of
Mm-hmm.
racing, baseball, whatever, you want the highest quality of officiating, because like you want it to come down to which driver, which team, which car is
Of
better,
course.
instead of having these questions of like, well, should that guy have gotten that penalty and lost these points, and now at the end of the season Aston Martin is 2 points off of Mercedes, and that penalty would have flipped the script or whatever. Like
Mm-hmm.
it just the consistency leaves, if you have consistency, it leaves no room for a lot of those questions, to the integrity of your sport.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's moments like we're talking about the Alonso v Russell there in Melbourne, last race out. Yeah, moments like that definitely create confusion, frustration. Why does that guy get to break the rules, but this guy doesn't in this scenario? So yeah, whether or not you agree with it, the more stuff we have like that, and then the more inconsistent, like you're saying, officiating, the less uh what's the word, integrity, the less competitive integrity you have, and we want the utmost, right?
Yeah, because like you don't want, everyone hates when officiating decide makes the difference, or oh, this penalty gets called right at the end of. I mean, it happened in the women's Final Four for college basketball. There was a penalty called in the one game, and everyone's
Okay.
like, "That's not a penalty." No, it is a penalty, and everyone's arguing about that instead of this like really good game that came down to 2 points at the end between like two of the top teams. It's like
Sure.
comes down to everyone talking about the officiating. So, but to get into the race weekend, we've got a good bit to cover. So. We'll start off with the good, the bad, and the Latifi. So, Justin, how about hitting us with your good for this week?
Yeah, mine are just really simple here this week, honestly, and may surprise you, but my good here for this race was the battle of the pit teams. It was like halfway through the race on a lot of drivers, like second stop, I'm pretty sure. It was notably like a bunch of the like it was a bunch of the back of the field, but there were like I think there was like 4 or 5 teams all pitting at the same time, like scattered with a bunch of different drivers. So they're all coming into the pits, all like different slots. So your position came down to like your position out of that pit queue came down to like actually how good your pit team was, and it was exciting where it wasn't just about strategy, it wasn't just about tires, it wasn't just about the driver. You actually get this really exciting moment where the pit teams actually decided a little bit of the running, and then you see the trickle down of that because who got a really good exit out of that little pit battle? Yuki Tsunoda, who was able to improve his position significantly over the course of this race. Yuki Tsunoda on a track that everybody says like, oh yeah, it's like really hard to overtake. There's only one DRS zone. Like with the help of his pit team, Yuki, I believe, like really improved his luck over the course of this race. So that's my good is seeing like a definitive moment where somebody other than the pit wall and or the driver had a definitive outcome on at least these drivers' race. I thought that was very exciting.
Nice. That was something that I had noticed while going through the race as well. There were a number of times where drivers were coming into pit together. I think there was a point when Lando and Leclerc maybe had come in
That
right
was
around the
another
same
one, yeah.
time where they were trying to. We were seeing, and it didn't end up swapping positions at all. It just they both came in, had clean stops, and both came out right about the same distance from each other. It was like a tenth or 2/10 off in terms
Yep.
of stop time, but that could be if you have a Sauber pit stop, then then that could be. I mean, well, that would be devastating to anyone's race. But if you
For
have
sure.
a 4 second stop instead of a 2 second stop, I mean that could be that position. Could be that track position in terms of just being able to move up the grid a little bit more or get after someone or not getting split by someone who is coming through who did not pit and everything. So, yeah, I thought that was kind of the more interesting part of that middle section that
Hmm.
the intense action kind of chilled out a bit, where you're able to see kind of that strategic decision. So, yeah, definitely enjoyed that.
What was your good for the race?
So my good was really just Charles Leclerc's race, his strategy call, where he and the pit wall were kind of trying to decide whether you go plan B, plan C being the extended stints going for the one stop versus the kind of two stop strategy. And Leclerc looking at his performance, he goes from a pretty tough qualifying, starting off in P8, makes his way all the way up to finish up in P4, which is a huge result for Ferrari. While it is still so tight with Red Bull here in the beginning of the season, it's still so
Hmm.
tight to get that lead and maintain that lead over McLaren. Um, so a really nice result that was really in part to his call to be like, no, like tires are good. And looking at and we'll talk about it a little bit more, looking at his tire degradation, he was the best of all of the drivers in terms of preserving those tires. So not only did he make the call, but his driving and the car kind of held up under that strategy call to bring home that P4.
Yeah, and just a small shout out there, like to the just I guess the pit wall to the drivers and then the drivers back to their engineers. It seems like communications may be improving a little bit over there at Ferrari because it seems like they were understanding of their positions on track, kind of who their races were with, and didn't really waste time squabbling with each other too much.
Yeah, that was the other Ferrari component of kind of knowing that they're on those separate strategies and everything, and
For
not
sure.
holding each other up. But for the bad, what did you have this week?
Just the fact that FP2 got canceled
Mm.
overall, there was limited running, but yeah, overall teams not able to get a lot of data, and just bad in the sense of like it's not a tragedy, obviously, but just bad that teams don't get the full prep. And ultimately, just what that means is maybe just a little more jeopardy and maybe a little more possible surprises in the race. Maybe teams don't know, like, for sure what the tire life is going to look like on, low fuel or, like, high fuel or whatever scenario they didn't get to test, right?
Yeah.
If they end up in there, does something unexpected happen, basically. So that's all it really means for us. And so my bad was basically just kind of from the angle of the teams where it's just unfortunate to not get all of your allotted running time, because these teams do have like very specific run plans that they want to get done and data that they want to accumulate to make sure they have like the best plan going into the Sunday. And as you'll see, like a lot of teams had a lot of different strategies on Sunday because of different tires available, what happened in qualifying, all of these different things. So you can just see how much all of this data means and the vice versa, the lack of it.
Yeah, and so in this case, it's unfortunately like an environmental cause for it, which
For
is
sure.
unfortunate, especially with like Daniel Ricciardo not driving in practice session one. So Ayuma Iwasa was able to drive and do that practice session, but then not getting hardly any running in practice two. He had just the one practice session to be able to
Right.
prepare. Of course, his race ended up ending pretty early. So I don't know if that maybe was a slight component in that he didn't really get a good jump off the line and whatnot. But yeah, and just thinking of kind of like I said, that's an environmental reason. I'm interested to see and looking at the teams and a lot of teams having data that they want to gather. We have the next race at the Chinese Grand Prix, which is a circuit that we haven't raced in multiple years. It's been
Hmm.
resurfaced since the last time they raced there, and it's a sprint weekend. So we only get one practice session for that. Then we have sprint qualifying, the sprint race, qualifying, and then the race. So I think
Hmm.
that's going to be a really tough weekend as well. More of a decision from Liberty to say yes, this circuit that no one's driven in a while should get the least amount of practice for for the race.
Yeah, increase the jeopardy, increase the the surprises. But yeah, you can just see how it can compound pretty easily with just like limited running being available. But yeah, what was your bad here for the week?
So my bad was kind of piggybacking off of my ugly from the last episode, but Williams, the woes continue. You have
For sure.
Logan Sargent with the repaired chassis, losing it in practice session one, crashing out. Fortunately, the car was able to be repaired, and there was no running in practice two that he missed out on really. So able to get that back together. Um, just for him to go off track into the gravel during the race and lose out on probably two positions that he could have been above the Alpines. So not doing himself any favors. But then Alex Albon again doing no favors to the team, and the mechanics are probably running out of gas, as it were, over there at Williams, having to put these cars back together and do all these repairs because, I mean, that was a pretty big hit that Alex took contacting Ricardo on lap one. That I'm concerned. Like James Vowles in the team principal press conference this week said that new chassis take 6-8 weeks to be built and everything. And you can do it faster if you put like all of your resources into it, but you can't do that as an F1
Right.
team. So there is potential that they're going to be using 2 repaired chassis, and hopefully not only racing one car again because they only have one chassis that's been patched up in good enough shape. But yeah, it's just it's a tough spot to be in, and exacerbated by the just unfortunate incidents. Alex Albon just kind of being in Ricardo's blind spot, unfortunately.
Yeah.
From what it seemed like, a number of the drivers were saying, it didn't. They kind of looked at it as just a racing incident, essentially. Like, he was in his blind spot. It just kind of sucks. So that is my bad for this week. But we'll move along to the ugly, and then start talking about some tires.
For sure. The like mine is more of a joke. I'm not like being actually critical because I imagine, it was all up to par. But we were just laughing after the first safety restart where like, you got to wait for them to like rebuild the tire wall and make sure it's structurally sound and whatever. But it was just so funny that shot that like, once they were all done and we were about to get back underway, the shot that like shows the repaired wall, and it's just like this slumped thing that was like laid like over the tire walls. I'm just like, damn, dude. There have been other races where they're like, no, we need new tires, get new concrete out there. You have like the inspector with like his little magnifying glass. He's like, is there a crack in this? We need a new one. Like, we've literally seen races like that, and then this one, they're just like, just lay it along the tires, it'll be fine. And then they just like get underway again. Me and
Yeah,
Sarah were dying.
that's as good as it's gonna get, boys. Sorry.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, like just totally that vibe, and we were dying.
Well, and my ugly is also a little bit more lighthearted, but it was the ugly for me was Lance Stroll and his little team radio temper tantrum.
Oh, bro.
The voice cracking is a clip where he was just so incredulous about the fact that the car was not fast as he would have liked, and I mean, Alonso has said similar things and all about the straight line speed of the car and everything, but Lance, like, starting off in P16 ain't helping you out, bud. Like, that is the bigger issue, is you're getting stuck back in the back of the pack and having to make a drastic amount of overtakes just to get to the points, which you weren't able to do this week.
Right.
Like, while your teammates starting P5, finishing P6, like, putting in a really solid drive, like, yeah, your straight line speed might not be it, but if you were up in a better position, then you wouldn't have to worry as much about that straight line speed.
Well, and that's actually like the interesting footnote that kind of like underlines your point here about Lance Stroll is like he is one of many lopsided driver battles that we have in F1 right now. Like, you look at the two Haas cars, very lopsided. You look at the, like we were just talking about, the Aston Martins, very lopsided. You look at the, Williams, and
RB, I think, is 4-0 also to Yuki in quali.
right, exactly. And even it's very close on track, but if you look, I'm pretty sure Russell is 4-0 against Hamilton right now too. Right. So even in the upper echelons of our grid as well. So there is something going on with the way these, man, Toto was talking about transparency this past week, but it's like I wonder how many garages are actually sharing that much setup information, because there are significant, drastic differences between the way these cars are set up on some of these teams.
Yeah,
and Lance to Alonso is one of them.
Yeah, that's a huge point to keep an eye on, I think, because I mean, and in Red Bull's case, like Checo's obviously typically starting very high, has had a lot of
Hmm.
P2 starts and everything as well. But I mean, Max is 4-0 on him too. Max is 4 pole positions, so I mean,
Yeah.
can't really beat that.
Sergio's finishing
But
very closely
he's,
behind
yeah,
him.
much
That's the
closer
difference.
than the split. And even like looking, I'd say with Haas, like Haas has been very close typically in the races, even if they haven't been in qualifying.
But
So
you have to
there's,
look at that
you
single
do,
lap
oh,
pace and say
100%.
Hulkenberg's
Well,
really getting the best of this right now.
that's why Audi is going, oh, we want
Of
Nico
course.
Hulkenberg and Carlos Sainz, and they're not going, we want Kevin Magnussen and Carlos Sainz. They're not
Yeah.
like that phrase has not been spoken.
Magnuson stock's going way down.
Yeah, so but quality matters a lot with those teams that are right on the verge of the points and everything. So
For sure.
so yeah, definitely interesting to look forward to. But talking about tires, I know you wanted to talk a bit on the tire allocations for the weekend and kind of the variations between teams. I wanted to talk on tire deg a little bit and kind of how that affected the race as well. So
Well, it seemed like it affected it huge, honestly. Like, so if you go back and look at the tire allocations and how teams spent them over the race and over the weekend, you see a bunch of the, five and below teams looking to make dives on their qualifying day and spend more of their soft tires in or sorry, spend more of their medium and hard tires to where they had limited options for those during the race and had to utilize soft tires in which the teams that were finishing in the like top 10 top 11 of this race didn't really have to utilize the soft tires at all. One of the exceptions being Yuki Tsunoda and also Alonso starting on the soft tires, not really making a good gain, and then changing it up. But I do find it very interesting on a track like this where teams uh, have to make large sacrifices on one day or the other, and not only that, setup changes on one way or the other, because a circuit like this has not only fast and flowing long straights, but it also has these really technical sections and these high speed corners that demand a lot out of your car. So you're seeing these just setup issues, drivers not being able to hook up these sections lap to lap. And you see that come through in the way that many of these teams had to spend what seems like more tires than they wanted to come Sunday, because we have a lot of teams on three stop strategies, the soft tires just falling apart within very few laps. So to your point, we're seeing degradation be a huge factor here while teams were trying to get the setup just right for a very, I'll use the term, temperamental track.
yeah, well, and like we saw the variation between how the tires were coming apart, like just by the change in temperature during the race as well. But yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, it's kind of unfortunate that we didn't have the opportunity to see the soft tires from the beginning, like really make that impact, because so many drivers did just make tire changes after lap one when the red flag came out.
Right.
So having so many people switch, like we didn't really get a good feel of like whether the soft tires were going to make ground, because we saw at some points, like you said, with Yuki Tsunoda going, I think he had multiple passes on the outside through the S's and like on the soft tires, which is not a place that you see passing normally, but that the soft tires were giving a lot of good grip, just
Hmm.
not lasting that long, which is why and I appreciate that a bit more now, knowing more about F1 and also like IndyCar. The tire levels in variations between the alternate and the standard tire in IndyCar are typically relatively drastic, where
Yeah.
you're just go like between a soft tire and a hard tire and no medium in between. So seeing some of the ground that Yuki was able to make on the soft tires was it was just a bummer that we didn't get to see it play out entirely from the beginning. But overall, I mean, really, it did shake things up a little bit. Like you said, a lot of the top teams just sticking to the medium and hard tires instead.
Well, and it's kind of sick too with the Sonoda strategy because like that's the thing that we've seen Valtteri do a couple of times in the was Alfa Romeo now Sauber, where we've seen him like opt for that, that including soft tires in your strategy and never really pans out as well as kind of a gamble like this did here. And not really a gamble, just just a different strategy. But yeah, really paid off for Yuki, and it's just surprising where most I should say this. It feels like most weekends, they don't really talk about tires all too much. It feels like teams kind of have everything available, whatever they want. But it was just more of the conversation. So I just wanted to, just see and look into it. It's like, oh, what? There was like a big difference on what teams use, what they ended on, what their plans were. So yeah, a fascinating race in that regard, honestly. So that was just
Yeah.
kind of the lens that I wanted to look through for just a little bit.
And I think it's also like one just kind of final note regarding the tire allocations and everything. But Yuki, of course, made it to Q3 as well, so he still had to use the same amount of tires as the front runners and everything in the qualifying sessions that could have kind of put him behind potentially in that position, but
Hmm.
still was able to utilize the soft tires well during the race and everything to make up those positions. From my side, looking at the tires, it was of course a pretty big topic on the weekend, but the tire degradation from the start of the race really fell off towards the end of the race after things got cloudier, track temperatures cooled down. But that really seemed to just be the biggest boost, primarily to Ferrari and McLaren a bit with their tire degradation. Looking at the top teams and who was able to really keep their tires in the right window and everything. On both of Leclerc's stints, he was consistently dropping his time lap after lap, so he was getting faster pretty much each lap and trending in that direction. So tires weren't hitting graining stages where he was slowing down for some laps to fight through it and everything. He was able to like keep the tires in a very good window, which I think is great news for Ferrari, that they are sort of past some of those degradation issues that they had last season, where they were just like losing out to Red Bull, not on pace, but more so in those long runs and longer
Hmm.
stints. But also, I think we have to kind of take it with a grain of salt, because although he did this for both stints, he still, I think his overall pace was slightly off the Red Bulls. So it's almost was his degradation better because the pace was pulled back a little bit? If he was maybe if he was going at the Red Bulls pace, then the tire deg would have been worse. But I mean, it's definitely just an improvement for Ferrari to see their car not just burning through tires like crazy, like we've kind of seen in the past. And then McLaren had a pretty similar result towards the end of the race, with Lando in particular on his last stint, having that consistently better lap time, lap after lap in that last stint.
Yeah, and those two were like, you know, racing each other specifically, like where Sainz in his Ferrari was, he was shooting for the podium based on Leclerc's pace and his strategy. He was, he was racing Norris behind him, so it really mattered that he in the race, Norris likely catches Leclerc if he is not improving his time lap after lap, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and so the fact that both of them were able to like consistently improve in those last stints was like just I think good data for the teams to have and good to see that the car was managing the tires well. Um,
Hmm.
but it'll be interesting to see if that maybe is circuit dependent or kind of how that pans out. Um, Fred Vassar had said that he feels like they may have put their tire struggles in the past a little bit after seeing the Japanese Grand Prix, and I mean I hope he's right because that'll allow them to bring the fight up to the top a bit more consistently. Um, looking forward to some good racing if they can continue that progress.
Yeah, and kind of speaking about you know, issues resolved and, looking to the future, we had a bunch of teams bring upgrades this week. So it was Alpine primarily, also Aston Martin brought some pretty big upgrades, and also your Red Bulls brought some upgrades as well.
RB I
For
think did
the
with a new floor.
Okay, very cool. So yeah, lots of teams targeting the Japanese Grand Prix here to upgrade their car. The ones that seem really interesting to me on the Red Bull were the little like air ducts that they built in kind of everywhere. You see these little like air inlets crop up behind the mirror supports. So it's just interesting that after the failure in Melbourne, team taking direct action to try and at least just adjust the way they have their air flowing around the car. So yeah, that was one of the big kind of developments that you know that I was aware of, and seemed to be kind of uh race critical, I guess you would say. Seeing as how they had that issue with Max's car, I thought that was a pretty cool one.
Yeah, and I always look forward to the upgrades that teams bring. Like, it's good to see Alpine like already trying to bring upgrades and fix their issues. And I think the biggest thing for me is we're only 4 races in, and we're seeing the smaller teams, are like RB and Alpine bringing in upgrades earlier to try and kind of uh, be a little higher up in that midfield fight.
Hmm.
But I think the one thing that I'm looking forward to for the Chinese Grand Prix at the next race weekend is that's when Haas is targeting their first upgrades. And in the past, Haas has kind of just done this thing where they're like, we're gonna bring all of our upgrades on like this weekend, and it's gonna be after like mid-season, way late in the year, where we're already like down for the count, and then here's when we're bringing it. But to see them kind of change with the new leadership structure with Ayo Komatsu coming in, bringing in smaller, more gradual upgrades, I think is going to suit them better, or allow them to be a bit more successful doing that style of upgrade instead of these just big, massive, here we're throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to that, but definitely was happy to see a number of different changes for the Japanese Grand Prix from the teams.
Yeah, and the development war is continual. These teams just trying to get edges on, their own problems and also the competition as well. So yeah, just a fascinating Grand Prix, honestly, from a lot of different angles.
Yeah, and just to kind of like give my final little notes that I had, I was impressed by Haas once again. Just a couple of the teams we didn't talk about too much,
Hmm.
but just finishing outside of the points again, like they're able to put themselves in a position to um, kind of be there if one of the top teams slips out of the top 10 to try and snag those points. Yuki did it this week, but they were right there, I think, in P11 and 13, right off the points as well with both cars. And then Valtteri had a pretty nice drive, in my opinion, as well. A bummer with Zhou having the DNF from the gearbox issue, but I felt like Valtteri just had a really solid drive across the weekend. Looked pretty strong at different points and had some decent pace. So hoping that he can. I mean, he started out P13. Ends up just finishing one place back in P14. That's not a bad weekend at all.
Yeah, especially, when most of his weekends were marred by pit stop issues. I mean, it's just nice to see him in his own race on his own merit,
Yeah.
and not having, it be decided by like outside factors, you could say. I enjoy that.
Yeah, I was happy to see that for Valtteri, but yeah, and then Alpine. I mean, their upgrades I think maybe brought them a little bit closer, but still just not what they need. So hopefully, maybe some of these upgrades they can fine tune a bit better with more practice and whatnot for the upcoming races to kind of try and pull themselves back into the fight a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely not encouraging to hear on the radio okay, Esteban, we need to push now, and he's like, "What do you mean I am pushing?" And they're like, "Aw, darn, we have a slow car."
Like, oh, we thought you were hiding some more pace.
Yeah,
I
definitely,
don't.
definitely was not.
Yeah, I don't think O'Connor Gasly feel like they're in a position that hiding any sort of pace that they have is what they need to be doing. So,
Yeah, definitely
um,
not the strategy.
yeah, so still a tough weekend for them, but yeah, I think that kind of wraps out the Japanese Grand Prix for this year.
The only things that I didn't get to say, I just wanted to mention these couple of little notes. Fastest pit stops, 2.1 for Perez, 2.3 for Sainz. Max had a 2.0. So just like it was just a great weekend for the pit teams. And then also the second high speed turn, I think it's like turn 11 maybe. They were calling it Degna 2. It was like that. It's that little
Mm,
like two piece of corners. That
yeah.
was catching literally every driver out, and
Yes.
that just makes me so happy when tracks are not like quote unquote like easy to drive. It was fun to see like literally everybody being called out by this turn all weekend,
Yeah.
not just in the race or practice or whatever.
Yeah,
So
Leclerc
yeah.
slid out wide. That's where
Yep.
Sargent went off. I think it's turn 9.
Turn nine.
That's
Okay,
right
gotcha.
after the S's. It like goes into that really like sweeping high speed two corners. But yeah, that was definitely interesting to see a number of drivers kind of struggle with that
Yeah.
spot.
Because like you just feel like these guys are on clouds. Like most of the time, it looks like they're like on rails, right? But then you get a turn like that, and it's like, okay, no, these guys are like making adjustments. They're figuring it out. So yeah, that was very exciting to watch. Not that I want anybody to crash, but it's just fun to see them be challenged by just like one turn in particular. That's very exciting to me.
Yeah, and I mean we've talked about it in the past, but like the fact that these cars can kind of do continue to go faster and faster, like you are putting the drivers in a position of having to be more like in tune with how fast they can take certain sections of track and everything
Right.
to stay, whether it's staying in track limits if it's a weekend that they're really like penalizing that heavily, or if it's something like this where the gravel trap is your penalty. So yeah, definitely that was an interesting thing to see. Like you said, a lot of the drivers kind of struggle with that section.
So very fun. Just another thing to love about Suzuka. So yeah, this race for the 2024 Japanese Grand Prix, we had Max Verstappen at the top of the podium. Sergio Perez comes in second, and Carlos Sainz comes in P3. So a 1-2 there for Red Bull, and then Carlos Sainz again on the podium. So if you missed it, go back watch the replay. But this was an exciting one, I have to say. Yeah, no F2, F3 chat this week. So we'll be able to get right into the cool down lap here. Just talk about some, non-motorsport related stuff. Bring you the what would you say,
The
the
spice of
sides?
life.
Yes, the spice of life. That's one way to describe it. Aaron, what's your
Also,
flavor of the week?
well, just wrote every race so far this season has been a 1-2 for a team. We've had 3 Red Bull 1-2s and a Ferrari 1-2. So
Pretty good.
yeah, not super common to see that, but yeah, looking at the flavor of the week for this week, my music, I came across an artist on TikTok called Samara Sin, spelled Cyn is the second part of the name, but she's a rapper, very like spoken word, smooth from the stuff I was seeing. It's very just like clean, and it flows so nicely, and the enunciation and everything, it's just like so crisp. I was just like hooked. So I was checking out some of her music on Spotify, listening a little bit this week, and enjoying some of her music. It reminded me a bit of another artist named No Name, who I think either you had put me on to, or it was from Kendrick, somehow related a few years back. But I had the same like kind of intrigue and excitement that I remember having when I was first listening to No Name and all, of just like, oh, this is a really cool, like really well-spoken artist who their flows are really smooth and everything. So I was enjoying that this week. My food for this week, Colleen and I had some friends over last night, and we got Mexican from one of the local Mexican restaurants that does pretty authentic like Mexican food. Just some really good tacos and chips and guac and all of those fresh ingredients and everything. It's just becoming a pretty solid go-to spot. And it's only about a mile away, so not too shabby.
That's not bad. Are the tacos like traditional, like just onion and cilantro?
Yeah, well, you can order them either way. We always go with they call it like American style or Mexican style, and we just always go with the Mexican style with it.
Nice.
With like the cilantro, onions, all that.
That's the way to go.
Yeah, so definitely a fun one. And then my visual medium for this week, I just wrapped up the anime Neon Genesis event. I think it's Evangelion. Evangelion.
That's how I've heard it pronounced.
Yeah, but I was looking for something to watch. I had heard that it was a top tier anime, and kind of one of those pillars of old school anime to watch and everything. So particularly with it being like one season essentially of like 20 some episodes, I was like, oh, I can tackle this, as opposed to some of the other older animes are just like insanely long, and I would be watching them for probably years potentially.
Dude, probably longer than you have life left.
Yeah, so that was it was a really good story, very interesting. I enjoyed kind of the twist. I watch a lot of action animes, and so there was a good mix of that with battle and fight scenes with these like mecha robot type creatures and aliens and
Hmm.
whatnot. But enjoyed that they had kind of a more like psychological twist on things. It wasn't just about the which thing beats up the other thing. There were some more like woven in themes to the story as well. So
Nice.
enjoyed that quite a bit. But that's my flavor of the week for this week.
Hell yeah, love to hear about somebody hitting a classic. Dude, I still remember. I'm pretty sure this was when we were going to see Tiny Meat Gang, and we were in your part of town way back when, and we found another taco joint,
Yeah.
and we had some late night tacos. So yeah, that's a fond memory of mine. But yeah, my flavor of the week here. So, Sarah, we tried some beef kielbasa. Have you ever had this?
I believe so. I feel like I usually have like just regular kielbasa, but
Okay, well, I'm pretty sure regular kielbasa is just
oh,
beef. It's
okay.
basically
I
just
was like,
beef sausage.
okay. I've never like had it specified of what the meat was. I've just always
Sure.
eaten kielbasa because I'm Polish, so it's
Right.
just a common thing. But but yeah. So then I assume I would have had beef kielbasa before.
There you go. Yep, traditional favorite from the old country. It's something. It's something that we would like sometimes make in like the warmer months. But Sarah and I had an opportunity to get some good kielbasa, so we picked that up. And honestly, it is like as great as I remember it. It was a nice, tasty meal. So we were very happy about that. And then, oh my God, I literally just like pulled my notes off screen. I can't get them back. So my All right, so that was my food for the week. My music here for the week. We got our speakers installed. So one of
Hey,
the yeah, very happy about them. They sound great. They look great. But with that, I wanted to like not just get better speakers, but like upgrade the experience. Um, I'm a shithead and I'm very stubborn. I would not play massage music. Like period. For as long as I've been doing it, I have not played massage music. I just play music that I like that's like it has vocals, right? That's just what I do. I've probably lost some customers doing it, whatever. But I started to think like how could I do better? And that was one of the things I was like, all right, well, if we have these nice speakers, I might as well let me just get 10 hours of no vocal, just relaxing massage music. So put that to the test, and I think it's working pretty well. The
okay.
one I did find, it's like an hour long. Like, do you know the song Hong Kong by the Gorillas? It's on their D-Sides album.
I would recognize it if I heard it because I've listened through a bunch of them, but I can't think of it from just the name.
No worries, it's got that vibe. It's like classically, I'll say, like Eastern sounds, right? But
Okay.
it very much reminds me of this Hong Kong song from the Gorillas. So we got a bunch of massage music now on some nice speakers. So definitely happy about it. And then my visual medium here for the week. I'm in the Bad Batch waiting room for season
Oh,
three to finish. That's like the only thing holding us back from just knocking out the whole thing is like we just want
I
to
didn't
do it
realize that
all.
they were doing another season.
Yeah, season three will be the final one,
When
and
is
then
it out? Or
I
is
think it'll
it
be
like,
done like mid-May.
are they
It's
doing
like
week by week?
yep,
Oh, I'll
yep,
wait.
yeah, exactly. So we're in the Bad Batch waiting room, and so what I decided to do was do the Infinity Saga, but instead of release order, which I've done every time, do chronological order.
Okay.
Right. So doing that, and that's been very fun. So you start with Captain America, and then you do Captain Marvel, and then you do, a bunch of the familiar ones. But that's
Yeah.
been really fun and exciting, and a totally like different take on the thing. So I'm thoroughly enjoying that. But yeah, that's my
Yeah.
flavor of the week.
I've done it that way once. I enjoyed watching it
Nice.
through
Okay.
in that order. I thought it
Okay.
was kind of fun, but yeah, that wraps up the flavor of the week. Love to hear it, and I'm always down to hear about some kielbasa. So glad you enjoyed that. But we hope you all enjoyed the episode this week with us talking about the Japanese Grand Prix and our whole mix of topics. We appreciate everyone taking the time to watch with us and spend. And I guess we'll keep an eye on the Twitter. We'll have to at least announce when we're doing weeks off like we did this past week. We're not going to hit every single off week with episodes, but we'll still have some. So keep an eye out for that, for any updates on kind of if we're having an off week of episodes and all there.
Yeah, just wanted to say, please hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you enjoyed the episode, if you enjoy what we're doing, if you're listening on Spotify, go ahead, leave a review. It helps a whole lot. We just want to say thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for spending your time with us. This has been another episode of the Tired Boys podcast. Peace out, everyone.
See ya.